Happy Mandalorian Eve, kids. This is Mrs. Donahue giving you a small little update on the world of the nerds. I just did like a bunch of Star Wars stuff with The Mandalorian because current obsession. And frankly, we're going to get Mandalorian until December 18th. And then we're going to have Christmas. And then WandaVision drops in January, like 2 weeks later, right after my birthday. So I'm very excited because I don't have to have too much in the way of gapping anymore. Although Jon Favreau said he wanted to shoot season 3 of The Mandalorian before year end, which is this month. So I don't think that's happening. However, I want to talk to you about a small internet rumor. There's something in the Mandalorian universe going on, and I've talked about it kind of at length in the other videos. It's starting to tendril out into other places and potentially involve other people. Now, I don't know if I need this in my life. I don't know if I need to see big-name characters like Obi-Wan Kenobi or Luke Skywalker. But apparently, Star Wars executives reaching out in the Nethersphere, trying to see if Sebastian Stan would like to play young Luke Skywalker. Now, if you do not recognize that name, shame on you, and you don't belong here. I'm kidding. We love you. But, I mean, that's the Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is young Luke Skywalker. Mama's here. This is everything that I want. I actually think the casting's kind of tremendous. Like, if you clean Sebastian Stan up from the, emo Bucky look, and you give him something more streamlined, you can very easily get him to young Mark Hamill. I don't know that I need to see it. I don't know that I need to see young Luke Skywalker becoming a Jedi Master, making his own Jedi school. Because if you're not here to give me Mara Jade, I don't care to see the school. They've already ruined expanded universe material with what they did with the new trilogy. And what could have been fun with Ben Solo and the Knights of Ren, what could have been done well, was done abysmally. So, there's always that. They could do it. They could do a great job of setting up these villains and still have the terrible ending and punchlines that they have. So whatever. I really hope that Mandalorian exists in a pocket universe where that trilogy doesn't exist. I haven't given it up. I would love if the only thing we kept from that new trilogy is Poe Dameron. That's it. Oscar Isaacs is the only watchable thing in 3 movies. He's the only watchable thing. He's the only one. He's holding it together. But in this cool crossover, you have more Marvel, Star Wars sort of back and forth. Oscar Isaacs was just cast as Moon Knight a month ago, so we're there. And in the Marvel world, they have their first appearance of Hawkgirl. Well, I don't know if we're going to call her Hawkgirl. I think she's just Hawkeye Part 2. But Haley Steinfeld was on the set of Hawkeye. So we're going to get our little girl learning how to shoot. I don't know why you don't just make it his daughter. I don't know why we don't just cast his daughter Lila and make her Hawkeye. But I suppose I'm just being picky. I guess his whole aura in the show became very keep my family separate than this. I do this and I leave them and then I come home to my family and my family is sacrosanct. So maybe he'd be very against his daughter doing it. But I don't know why we're not just having Lila Barton as the new Hawkeye. I will say that Marvel's very heavy-handedly going younger with their new casting. The other times they cast Avengers, they were casting people in their 30s, even in their 40s. A couple of people in their late 20s, but I mean, they by far and large had a cast of adults, and now they're casting more downward. It's supposed to be teenagers. Some of them are actively teenagers. Some of them are in their early 20s. But you're losing an element here of the grown-ups in the room. I'm not totally against it. You've had young team-ups before. In DC, they had Teen Titans. Marvel has its own Young Avengers style thing going on. But I just don't want this to become a pointless grab of we don't have to recast these guys for 20 years. I mean, Avengers, I think, lasted longer than they had any expectation of it lasting. When they casted Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in 2006, they weren't anticipating that they'd have to still have Iron Man in the same kind of physical condition in 2019. Robert Downey Jr. aged. And in the timeline of the movies, we're in fairly different space. So, same thing with like Chris Hemsworth. He's back at the helm and Fat Thor is gone and, Cut Thor returns. I mean, the guy's getting older. It's going to be harder to maintain that physical, like, sensibility. How much longer do we have Thor for? It's the issue with Hugh Jackman and Wolverine, right? Hugh Jackman's in his 50s now. It's harder and harder to maintain that physicality. I would love for Hugh Jackman to come back as Wolverine, but the man doesn't need to be doing this into his 70s. And it's the issue with casting Keanu in the role. Keanu Reeves is in great physical shape, and he's doing action movies, but the man is getting older. Let him age. Like, why can't we have some of these characters a little bit older? They're going to bring Cyclops in, and I would love to see them keep Cyclops older. He is team leader on Avengers. I don't need a young Cyclops. I would also really oddly, don't ask me why, but I would kind of love for Hope Summers to become one of the characters in the future. I do love that Marvel's going more female. I'm starting to get like a little, like, might be too many. We might be overplaying our hand here, Marvel. Like right now we have an incredible amount of women, some of which are not even women in the original source material. And there's nothing wrong with punning on the source material. But like, if you have good female characters already developed, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to use what's there. So I'm almost a little nervous that we're too heavy-handedly female. And this is coming from someone who just adores the hell out of the moment in Endgame where the women all nonsensically converged on one single point to like rally Captain Marvel through with Thanos' gauntlet. Like, my husband was like, why were all the women in one spot on the field? I was like, shut up, I'm having a moment here. I'm having a girl power moment. I like bring my daughter to the TV. I'm like, look, there's a Pegasus and a lady with a sword. Cool. I'm cautiously optimistic about the Disney Plus series because Mandalorian's proving that Disney can do this right. We haven't seen any of the Marvel Disney Plus material. WandaVision will be the first drop. It was supposed to be the second. But WandaVision looks tight. And I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with it because I think they're going to pocket universe it. Although I have to say that Disney owning Marvel and owning Star Wars makes me feel like they're either stealing each other's material or that the heads of Disney are like, pocket universes seem good. Marvel's clearly going to have issues with timelines and universes and parallel dimensions that are going to come to fruition in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. They've already casted Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. They're bringing in Ryan Reynolds. They're doing a lot of things. Loki's going to be in there. So they're crossing a lot of walls that used to be up. Like they're breaking down barriers. Mama holds the theory that we're going to do this in Star Wars because Ezra Bridger was not name dropped, but I mean, Thrawn was. And there's time travel. Where there is Ezra Bridger, there is time travel. So I'm kind of hoping we time travel right past the crappy trilogy we just made. Ben Solo could have been done so well. You know how I know this? Because in the expanded universe, his name is Jason Solo, and the stories are amazing. Could have been done so well. I held on to the hope that he and Rey were secretly Jason and Jaina Solo way too long. Like, this is me walking into Rise of Skywalker going, we could still pull it out. It could still happen. It could still be there. We could still have it. And then the terrible choices they made in that movie. I didn't walk out of the movie just because I needed to see something I love die. Star Wars died for me that day. And then Mandalorian brought it back to life. So I'm very excited about Mandalorian. On a ish related note, I want to talk Firefly. So I think part of the reason that Mandalorian so appeals to me is that I love Firefly. I came to Firefly late too, considering how much I love Joss Whedon, Nathan Fillion, and Westerns. This all should have happened for me much sooner. Westerns in space, sign me up. I'm here. Firefly is infamous in the sci-fi community because it has a tremendous cast, an amazing premise, and it lasted less than one season. And no one really knows why it was canceled. It's a lie, we know. It was just honestly 10 years before its time. If you brought Firefly out 10 years after the original Firefly aired, boom, instant success. And when they tried to save it by giving it a movie, they played their hand wrong. Firefly is what we now call like a cult success. it was not necessarily getting the live viewership numbers from the movie or the live TV viewing that it needed. But like DVD sales through the roof, like return customers, dedicated fandom, things that didn't matter to movie production companies in the 90s and early 2000s because they didn't need it to, because they were still on the old way of doing things. Those things weren't happening for Firefly, so Firefly never got the additional steam to go forward. But Firefly has a hugely dedicated, almost cult-like fan base, led by Nathan Fillion, who was the star of the show, and continues to talk about it. Like, it's almost a joke. Every time Nathan Fillion does a new project, he finds a way to name-drop Firefly in there. And there's a lot of people in the industry who love Nathan Fillion. He does things like voice work for the video game Destiny, where he always puts little bits of dialogue in about how much he misses that show that had that one good season. And the cast all seem to like each other, like legitimately like each other. It's weird because they haven't been together in 15 years. And yet they still seem like they're like, yeah, no, we would all do this. We would all do this show. And two of them, Nathan Fillion and, it's not Gina Carano because she's Mandalorian. I'm sorry, I'm having mom brain. But she plays Zoe Washburn in Firefly. And she's had a couple of very successful shows. She was on Suits. Friends with the Duchess Meghan Markle. So she's had some really good, like, epic work since Firefly. And yet it seems like they would all still come back to do Firefly. Now, in the last few years, we have seen from a show with less than one season, and then a movie that was supposed to be 2 movies, and then they canceled the other movie. So they have 1 movie, neither of which did particularly well. We have now gotten a book series, a comic book series, a bunch of merchandising and material. Like if you go on like Think Geek and other things that like your nerds supply warehouses, Firefly is going to be up there in terms of a search phrase with like Doctor Who, with like Star Wars. You have people seeking out Firefly. Firefly jokes are like, they're almost mass media level, considering how minor it was. Like, Star Wars is massive. Doctor Who is much older and much bigger than Firefly ever was. The fact that Firefly and Doctor Who could even have similar levels of fandom is insane. I think the reason that the books and the comics keep getting dropped, I smell it in the air. It's going to come back. We're going to get a Firefly back. This is all in kind of keeping with recent tradition where we can't write new shows, so we go back to old ones. Like we're having like reunion specials, we're having like Girl Meets World, stuff like this. Firefly could work because only 1 cast member died and his character was dead anyway. But the rest of the characters live and the actors are alive. Some of them are more successful now, but they do seem fairly dedicated to their fan base. And you would just need an opportunity to like get them in for a season and then like bow them out gracefully. Fans would go nuts for it. Firefly was really designed for something more like a streaming service, a fan-based subscription service, something like a Disney Plus. It's owned by Fox, or it was owned by Fox, and honestly, Fox doesn't know what to do with anything it owns, so it just needs to sell it. And it was helmed by Joss Whedon back in the day. Joss Whedon, the man behind Buffy, the man behind Angel, the man behind Avengers. Joss Whedon went through his own sort of difficult period after Avengers where it came out that he's really not as, I don't know, progressive or nice as he was perceived. I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard. But his body of work is awesome. What he could do with Firefly on a service like Netflix or Amazon Prime, it would rival something like Mandalorian. It really would. And I have just this sinking suspicion that they are looking for things like that. Because right now, the allure of a subscription service has to be exclusive material. Like, you pay for Disney Plus because you can't get Mandalorian anywhere else. You can't buy it on Amazon. You can't buy it outside. Where are your Avengers movies? Where are your Avengers shows? You can't get them on cable. You can't get them on Amazon. You can't just decide to buy or rent something. Now, this is going to be crazy because, like, you know, Even if you didn't want a streaming service, when movies were live, you could at least go see a movie and give them your money that way and then be like, I'm not paying for a service, I got my fix. But like the quarantine has changed everything. I don't know that real movie theaters are going to come back. I don't know that there's a purpose to it. And Disney will decide whether or not it believes in real movie theaters with what it does with Black Widow. Mark my words. They have pushed her back and pushed her back and pushed her back because they know what kind of money that makes in the movie theaters. Mulan, meh, wasn't trending to do well. Didn't do that great on streaming. Did better on streaming than they thought. Trolls 2 killed it in streaming. No one thought that movie was going to do well as like a pay-per-view type style thing, and it did amazing. Mulan, meh, Mulan probably did Mulan money no matter what. I don't know that Mulan was greatly hurt by being dropped on Disney+. But Black Widow could have a very drastically different performance rate on a streaming service versus a movie theater. So Disney will decide how much they buy into it with Black Widow. Mark my words. But that's Mrs. Donahue. Theories on Mandalorian, a little Hawkeye, and at last, some Firefly. Happy Mandalorian Eve. See you kids tomorrow.